Secretary Sir Kier Starmer.
Morning.
Welcome.
Nice
Good morning.
To see you.
Thank you. Lovely to see you on BBC Breakfast. Nadeem Zahawi was one of those who says he's not given up hope of the Prime Minister winning tonight.
Really?
And then, yes, I know. And then managing to get her withdrawal bill through. There aren't many, as you suggest from your reaction, who suggest that will happen. Let's say, as most are suggesting, that there is a defeat.
Yes.
What does the Labour Party then do? Because there's lots of talk about the numbers of the defeat, how big a margin that is, and whether you then, as a party, go for a vote of no confidence.
Well, look, I think there will be a defeat. We'll have to wait and see. But this is not a good deal, and the Prime Minister went away 5 weeks ago to say she's going to get changes, and she hasn't got them, and that's why I think it will be a defeat. I think what has to happen next is that this evening, the Prime Minister needs to stand up at 7:30 when we know the vote and make a statement on Plan B. We've been discussing whether she should do it in 3 days, 7 days. She needs to do it today. She needs to stand up, make a substantive statement and say what Plan B is. And she's got a choice. She can either say, I'm going to bring back the same deal and try to ram it through one more time. That would be the wrong thing to do. Or she can say, I accept this deal is not going to get through and I need to change course and I need to involve Parliament in what happens next. They're the fundamental choices that are open to her now.
In terms of changing course, is there something, let's say that happens, is there something she can say that could get a significant chunk of the Labour Party to think, OK, we can support that? Maybe a suggestion of a customs union, a change to that withdrawal agreement?
Well, I think what she really has to say today is that she recognises that she's gone about this in the wrong way and to open the process up and to bring Parliament in. And she needs to say that this evening before she leaves the chamber. She can't just walk out of the chamber after losing a vote like this without saying that. That then opens up the debate for what can happen next. Now, what the Labour Party says is there ought to be a general election.
Okay, how do you get to that point? How do we get from where we are now to a general election?
Yeah, well, I mean, just hear me out, because the convention in the United Kingdom for decades was that if the government lost a massive vote, and this would be a massive vote, they should go to the country. The Prime Minister is really clinging on to the Fixed Term Parliament Act that stops that happening. So there needs to be a vote on whether or not there's a general election, and there ought to be, not just on the Brexit issue, on the wider issues. But if that doesn't happen, then Parliament needs to move on and say, what are the options credibly still open to us at this stage? And we're now, whatever it is, just over 10 weeks to the 29th of March.
OK, let's say, for example, and there's so many different permutations, let's say we do get to the stage where there's a general election. What are the Labour Party campaigning on in that general election? Are you a party of Brexit, or are you a party of trying to negotiate something different?
Well, I'm going to resist the temptation to lay out Labour Party manifesto.
If you forgive me, it is really important to know what that might be.
We will build, I mean, as Jeremy Corbyn said on the television over the weekend, we'll build on what's in the manifesto. We had a party conference motion this year that said that we'd vote down the deal if it wasn't good enough, call for a general election. If that didn't happen, other options such as a public vote should be on the table. We need to build on our manifesto, build on that policy. We've obviously got to go through the process within the party. But as I say, that today is about the meaningful vote. We've been fighting for this for 2 years.
I know you say today is about but you just mentioned a general election, so I'm asking you what Labour Party would campaign on if there's a general election, because the majority of the Labour Party, if you look at the polls, they would go down the sort of another referendum point of view.
Well, that's why we luckily for the Labour Party, we had a massive conference in September where the members can express their views and we vote on propositions, and we try to anticipate what's going to happen and in what order. We said, well, the first thing we think is going to happen is that we're going to have to vote on the deal, and if it's not good enough, we'll vote it down. The second thing is, if it goes down, there really ought to be a general election. But if that can't happen, we'll press on with other options, including the option of campaigning for a public vote. So that you've got a very clear expression, I think, of where the Labour Party is on this. And actually, that was unanimously passed and has been broadly supported across the Labour Party, Labour movement in the intervening months between the conference motion and now.
Can I ask you, and I don't expect you to give an answer to say, yes, it's this position, but in terms of your leader, Jeremy Corbyn, does he have a clear view of what his opinion is on Brexit? Do you know what he would do if he was given the choice?
You'll be pleased to know that Jeremy and I talk almost every day about Brexit. We are looking at the various scenarios as a team, because what we want to do is to come to a collective decision. Jeremy,
so he's unsure, is he?
No. The conference proposition, the conference motion I've just explained, is something that I supported, that Jeremy supported, and we're working to that policy. Now, of course, that means there are lots of discussions about exactly what happens when, what the options realistically are, what's the time frame, what order they come in, but we're talking it through and we will come to a collective decision. And I'm not going to pretend there aren't differences of views in the Labour Party, but I think in fairness to the Labour Party, if you look at the last 2 years or so, every time we've come to big decisions, we've had these discussions and we have, broadly speaking, developed our policy in a way that everybody has in the Labour Party been able to get behind. And I want to do that again. That takes time, it takes patience, but I think it's the right way to do it. And it is in stark contrast to the way the government has gone about this, where the fractures are really, really deep in the Tory party.
One last brief question, if I could. Lots of people get in contact with us today saying they agree with this or they don't agree with that, and I totally understand that, as you well know, it's split the country right down the middle, this. But one thing that comes through time and time again, from Maureen, who's a nurse, she says, it seems, and from Dan also, who's saying, it seems that lots of politicians are positioning themselves or their parties for what they would want, rather than engaging in the general public's point of view. Is that something that is reflected in what you're hearing as well?
Well, look, I do understand that, and obviously there are lots of views out there in the public, and more than any time, people come up to me in the streets, on the buses and the tube, and actually want to talk to me about Brexit. So I do understand people have strong views, they want to be heard in this, and I try to have all of those conversations. But in the end today, is very simple. Is this deal good enough for our country? And if the answer to that is no, then it's our duty to vote it down. And you would rightly be challenging me if I said, well, I really don't think it's the right deal, but I'm going to vote for it anyway, just to get it over with. That's the wrong thing. We've got a duty in the public interest to vote down a deal which isn't the right deal for our country.
OK, really good to talk to you.
Nice
Thank you very much, Sir Kier Starmer.